Good morning. How you doing, Harvey? Okay?
Not bad.
Okay. All right. Uh-oh. Something just happened. Okay,
I'm good.
you're good. All right. And I think we're,
Zev is on somewhere. There's Zev.
yeah, it's learning sponsors. A year of learning by Sue and Arnie Garlick in memory of Michael Proman and Philip Mann. And Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. And Yerivka Pro Rosna bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. In memory of family Habriut, murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim. Hello, Zev, good to see you. Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Shalom ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Israel ben Arav Akiva, Marsha Federbush and family. In memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas ben Arav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends. In memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbert Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan. In memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sidell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gidler, Avramea ben Shimon and Martha Gidler, Chana Bad Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova Bad Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Malka Levy, Malka Bad Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata Bad Asher. Friends of Nina Moinester, Nechama Asna Bad Yitzchak. A month of learning by, what's today's date? Today's the 7th, all right, so that one is actually finished. Okay, Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his mother, Dacia Gilbas Meir Halevi. Boca Babes in memory of their dear friend Susan Wertman, Chaya Sarah Bad Alta Yosef. Chaim and Phyllis Reese in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Yom Tov Lipa. Rabbi Kenneth and Karen Green and friends in memory of Karen's mother, Nechama Bad Moshe HaKohen. Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his father, Meir ben Yaakov. A week of learning by Stephen Edie Vigdor in memory of his mother, Mendel Bad Rav Shmuel. And that is it for today. May the Shemas Heaven Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shem Latzliah, Rachel B'nai Israel, Good Gaben Shtiar.
Amen.
Okay. I am going to have us start this morning on the bottom of Kaf Chet Amud Beis. Okay. I think that's okay. What?
Where, which line?
I'm going to tell you in a second. Yeah. Okay. Towards the very bottom, all right, we see a discussion there, and still in terms of kavana, and the discussion, by the way, is going to continue on to the next Amud, but we see Amar Rabba next to the last line. Okay, Amar Rabba, let's say it lo by kavana. To fulfill the obligation does not require kavana intent. La'avor bismano lo by kavana. Okay, also to transgress the it's right, right. It's we talked about Baal Tosif versus Baal Tigra. That was the argument there, right? Lo by kavana also does not need kavana, but he says it's bismano. Okay, shelo bismano by kavana. But if it was but in order to transgress when it's not the appropriate time to do the mitzvah, okay, then it does require a clear intent. Right, so that's where they finished yesterday. Okay, all right, so we're picking up, all right, so we're picking up there that last line now for the new Gemara. Okay, Amar le Rabbi Zera l'Shameh. Rabbi Zera spoke to his servant. Okay, and he told him as follows, as we start today's daf, Kaftet, Ichavein v'takali. Okay, have kavana, have intent, clear intent. The implication being that he should have, as the mashmiya, should have intent for the shomeya, who would be Rabbi Zera, right? Vit utkali, and sound the shofar for me, right? Alma, therefore, says the Gemara, what? Kasava, we must then derive from this the concept, mashmiya by kavana, okay? That the person, in other words, it's not just the shomeya, okay, but the mashmiya, the sounder, I'm going to say, has to have kavana, and the listener has to have kavana. What, Alan?
The transmitter and the receiver.
That's another one. Okay. That's already, now you're being technical, okay? Okay. So, I hope you guys heard that, all right? Tive, a challenge. Now, we're going to see the Gemara is going to list a number of challenges to Rabbi Zera. Okay? So, let's see the first one. All right? Haya over acharei beit hakneset, if somebody was passing by the shul. O shaya beito samuch lebeit hakneset, or his house is near the shul, right? Vishama kol shofar, and he heard the sound of the shofar, o kol Megillah, or the reading of the Megillah. Im kivein libo, if his intent, okay, what? Yatsa, this says he's filled the obligation. V'im lav, and if not, lo yatsa. Okay, what does this mean?
Rabbi Green would seem incongruous, the fact that shofar is the Oraisa and Megillah is Rabbana.
Good. Let's see if the Gemara raises that point. Good point. Baruch shekivanta. V'chivein libo ma'i have, asks the Gemara. And do we say if his intent, right? And this is the shomeya, right? If that seems sufficient according to this particular statement, which would contradict Rabbi Zera, who was telling us that it really needed both shomeya and mashmiya. Okay, exactly. So now the Gemara goes, Heyach, in regarding the other one, that's okay, the sounder, the mashmiya, right? Lo kamechavein adat hadidei. Okay, don't we need him to have intent for the, I'm going to say the other person, the listener, the receiver, right? Hacha b'shaliach tzibur askina. But here maybe we're dealing with the example of the shliach tzibur. Why is that different? The da'ate akule alma, because his intent when he's shliach tzibur is to be motzi everybody.
Anyone who hears.
Right?
The listener doesn't know that. I mean,
But the implication seems to be that it doesn't
be the situation, but
that it doesn't have to be.
Rabbi Green, can I ask you a question? If you listen to the blowing of the shofar through hearing aids, are you Yotze?
Oh, we'll talk about that afterwards, Zev.
Okay.
Blowing the shofar through hearing aids. That's what I wanted you to show me the psak, right? Okay. We had a short discussion about that on Friday. We have a difference of opinion in the group, and we're going to follow up on it. Okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. So,
My question was, if the person who's listening has no idea what the intent of the person inside was, for all he knows, the person inside.
he may not have to have. Alan, good point. Baruch Shekivanta. Remember, we've seen the Gemara raise the question that he was Tokea Lashir. Okay? But then maybe he thought it was a dog barking or a donkey braying.
Well, he
Okay.
thought it was, he thought it was valid shofros, but the person who's blowing had intent not to be.
So,
Wait a second. What, the Shobeya, the guy had no intent, and people walking by? What kind of guy is this?
okay.
Normal
That's
person.
what the Gemara is saying when it says, Hafa b'shliach tzibur askinan. He's saying, we're not talking.
Okay.
There has to be mutuality. There has to be mutuality. That's what it comes down to.
By during Musa. And he hears the sound of a shofar. So the assumption is that the guy is blowing it for the kehillah. And the assumption further is that the shliach tzibur is not saying, I'm only being mighty the guys in the first 8 rows. He's saying, I'm mighty everybody
Who
hears
can hear it? That's the
So
point.
that's why the guy next door
Okay.
or the guy in the parking lot are yaitse.
All right.
If they're aware. that
All right,
he's
so
blowing the
let's-
shofar,
All right, so
listen.
let's go ahead in the Gemara because the Gemara has got to address this. Okay, it seems, right, because it seems that this statement would show a attempt, a challenge to Rabbi Zera. So far, we've seemed to say on the one hand, Rabbi Zera says it has to be both Mashmiya and Shomea. And here, this seems to be simply on the part of the Shomea. So all I want to say is let's go on. We've raised a number of issues. Let's go on with the Gemara, because Gemara isn't happy with this either. Tashma, listen to the following Braita. Nitkavein Shomea, velo nitkavein Mashmiya. So this Braita now is going to raise this question, same issue, but in another way. Okay, the Shomea has kavanah, but the sounder, okay, transmitter doesn't. All right, lo nitkavein mashmiya, or I'm going to put in here, okay, nitkavein mashmiya, velo nitkavein shomea, okay, or the sounder, the transmitter had kavanah, but the listener did not. Lo yatsa ad sheyitkavein shomea umashmiya. So this Braita clearly, I'm going to say for the moment, supports the view of Rabbi Zera, okay? However, Katani, says the Gemara, mashmiya dumia de shomea. From the Braita, says the Gemara, it would appear that we learn that there is a parallel between the one who is the sounder, the mashmiya, and the one who is the shomea, the listener. Ma shomea, shomea la'atzmo, af mashmiya, mashmiya la'atzmo. It's possible, says the Gemara, that we could have the situation where one who's listening is listening for himself, or one who is blowing for himself. Okay, namely, I'm going to come back to Alan's question. Maybe he was only practicing, right?
No, it says he's blowing for himself, so
Right.
he is yaitse his own blowing.
Right, that would be a separate issue.
Blowing for his sick wife. And
That's
you were
right.
walking
I'm not
in that
disagreeing.
blowing here.
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm saying that he's blowing. Okay, so you can understand blowing for himself either to simply fulfill his own requirement or somebody in his home, or he's simply practicing. Because certainly if he's practicing,
That's okay too.
that's right, that's another issue.
But the thing is that the Mishnah said specifically, over Acharei Beis HaKnesses. It's not reasonable-
That's a separate challenge.
Right.
that's a
Right, no,
separate-
no, but it's unreasonable to say that he's blowing only for himself.
No,
if
but
he's
this
blowing
is a
Beis HaKnesses.
Bryce. This
Yes,
is
it's
Okay,
Bryce.
so this brisa is a separate challenge, okay? So let's go on, ukatani, but it's taught, lo yetza, that he didn't fulfill it. What's the issue? Tanaihi, this is a machloket tanaim. The Tanya, as we learn elsewhere in a brayta, shomea la'atzmo, if one is listening, but he is listening only for himself. Umashmiya lefi darko, and one who is sounding, blowing, goes according to the darko. I'm going to explain here for the moment as the normal, appropriate approach. Okay?
What cotton is blowing? Is he like that? That's everybody?
Right. Have we had a Gemara that says Cheresh Shotev Katan? Right? You don't remember it. If you go back to the beginning of the Mishnah, I believe, well, we're going to get to a Mishnah, okay, that's going to clarify that issue. Next Mishnah, right? Okay, I remember seeing. Amar Rabbi Yossi, says Rabbi Yossi. Okay, now why are we bringing in Rabbi Yossi here all of a sudden? It's the reason I'm going to suggest is it could be that Rabbi Zera holds like Rabbi Yossi. Okay, and explaining, and therefore in this machloket about the Tanaim regarding the Braita. So let's go on. Amar Rabbi Yossi, he says, B'med varim amorim, b'shaliach tzibur. Okay, we're talking about somebody who's acting as the Torah reader during Musaf for the community, things like that. Okay, aval b'yachid, but in regards to doing it, okay, as an individual, lo yatsa ad sheyikavein shomea umashmia. Okay, there is no right. So therefore, again, this agrees with the view of Rabbi Zera. Okay. Well, it supports the view. Rabbi Yossi supports the view. Okay, when it's individual,
which was exactly what he said.
What Richie said, because he said to his shamus, to his servant, "Lo for me."
So
Okay.
he needs affirmative.
So Rabbi Zera does hold like Rabbi Yossi, okay, that it has to be both Shomea and Mashmia, at least on an individual basis, right?
Because the presumption is that the Shliach Tzibur has given it to be
For everybody. Okay.
And when he practices or when he learns, he's supposed to learn the whole
Right.
practice and learn.
We hope so. Okay. Matnitin. Okay, a new Mishnah. All right. Okay. Sid, you're going to want to look at the end of this Mishnah in a moment. Okay. All right. V'hayaka asher yarim. Okay, so now I want a quick introduction.
846.
I forgot
Okay,
to-
the previous Mishnah discussed topics in regards to kavana, one's intent. Therefore, this Mishnah is following up on that discussion by continuing the topic with raising some psukim at the beginning to try to clarify what is the whole issue of kavana. Okay, so now here we start with a pasuk. V'haya kasher yarim Moshe yado v'gavar Yisrael v'gomer. That's regards to the war with Amalek, right? Moshe raised his hand; they were victorious. His arms fell down; they were losing. All right, okay. V'chi yadav shel Moshe osot milchama o shovrot milchama. Are the hands of Moshe such that they guarantee, I'm going to use the word victory, or result in defeat? Okay. Ela lamarlach, to tell you, kol zman shayu Yisrael mistaklim klape mala, so long as they look towards heaven, umishabdin et libam la'avihem shebashamayim. Okay, and they direct their prayers and their thoughts, etc., towards Hashem. Hayu mitgabrin. Okay, they were successful. So this seems to now going to tell me that the whole issue of kavanah is more than just what you think, okay, or how you feel, your personal intent. It's talui, okay. It's also dependent on Hashem. V'im lav hayu nofli, and if not, they were unsuccessful. Ki yotzei b'davar ata omer. In a similar manner, we might say as follows: Aseh lecha saraf v'simuto al nes. Make the snake and put it on a pole. V'haya kol hanashuch v'ra'a oto v'chai. And whoever sees it will be healed, will live. V'chi nachash memit nachash mechayeh. Is it possible that such a representation of a snake is going to bring life, okay, or bring death. And we all know, everybody, that what's the medical symbol? Right, that's it. That's it. Okay, Ella, Bisman Shi Yisrael Mistaklim Klape Mala, at the time that they look towards heaven. Mishabdin et libam le'avim shebeshamayim, and right, they look towards heaven. Hayu mitrap'in, they would become healed. Ve'im lav hayu nimukim, and if not, they rotted. Okay, now here's, okay, all right. Cherei shoteh v'katan, ein motzein et harabim yedei chovatan. Okay, right? Neither of those three individuals, one who is issue with cheresh, okay, how we may define cheresh today, all right? Shoteh, one who is mentally incompetent, katan, a minor, they cannot fulfill the obligation of the many, right? Zeh haklal, this is the ruling. Kol she'eino mechuyav b'davar, eino motzi et harabim yedei chovatan. If one doesn't have the obligation, one can't fulfill the obligation for others. Okay, now let's roll along. Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. Okay.
But here's the
So-
next question, Reb. Reb,
Yeah.
can a woman blow a shofar?
Oh, good question. You want to know, can a woman blow shofar? Let's see what the Gemara says. Okay. Okay. It could be that she's capable of performing the act, but whether that fulfills the obligation of the community, that's a whole nother discussion. Okay, you'll bring it up when we get to it later in the Gemara, okay? All right, so what happens? Tanu Rabbanan, we're back to shofar blowing. Hakol chayavin b'tkiyat shofar. We say everybody is obligated in shofar, and we're going to get a whole geschichte here. So Kohanim, get ready. You're the first guys we're going to talk to. All right? Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. All right? They need, all right? Who else? Gerim, converts. Vavadim Mishuchrarim. All right? Freed slaves. V'tumtum, and one whose genitalia is unsure. Vandriganus, and one whose genitalia has both. Okay? Mi shechetzio eved v'chetzio ben chorin. Also one who was owned in shutafut, who was jointly owned, and one of the persons freed them. So he's half freed, half slave. Okay? So what happens? Now we're going to review each one. Tumtum eino motzi lo et mino v'lo et she'eino mino. If somebody is a tumtum and we don't know what their gender is, okay, he can neither satisfy the obligation for one who is like him or one who is not like him. Okay, secondly, androgynous, all right, hermaphrodite, motziet mino, can blow the shofar and satisfy those who are like that person, aval lo et she'eino mino, but not for the person who is not like him, right? Because the question here comes again, could a female blow shofar for, if you assume that the androgynous is female, they cannot fulfill the obligation for a male.
He has male genitalia.
Yeah, it doesn't, right, but that's the point.
Tumtum can't because we do not
Don't know,
what he
But,
is.
but the issue with the androgynous is still, okay,
He has
one,
too much
if you
sex.
assume that it's a female, even though they may have both, even if you assume that they're more female, can't blow for a male.
But he
That's
can
the
blow for
point.
another androgynous.
Only
Does that
another,
mean they can blow for themselves?
they could blow for themselves. Yes, they could blow and satisfy their own individual
So
obligation.
could a woman.
That's the
Right.
woman.
So could a woman, right? Misha chetzio eved. What about the person who's only half a servant, half a slave, and half free? V'chetzio ben chorim. Eino motzi lo et mino, v'lo et she'eino mino. Can't fulfill somebody that's in that situation. Why? Because we might say the slave is blowing for the free person. That doesn't work. Free person can't blow for the slave. That don't work. Okay, so that's the
He has
situation.
to only listen with his left.
All right. Amar Mar says the Matzah, Hakol chayavin b'tkiyat shofar. But we said in our Mishnah, Everybody is obligated. Kohanim, Levi'im, V'Yisraelim. Pshita, isn't that obvious? Why did we even have to say that? Right? Okay, Kohanim, here we go. Ihani, Lamachayve. Okay, maybe these, namely we're talking about you Kohanim there, maybe they're not obligated. Man Mechayev, but based on what are they obligated? Kohanim Itztarichale. But we needed to include Kohanim in this statement that they are obligated to hear. Why might we have thought that was not the case? I might have thought to have said, since there's a pasuk that says, Uviyom Truah Yelachem. Okay, that pasuk says the day hearing the sounding of the horn, right? Man, okay, and when is it? Yom Truah, a particular day. In other words, it is Rosh Hashanah, the day that we sound. Man delite, okay, Ela b'tkiya dechad yoma, who the mechayev. We might infer from that pasuk that only one, okay, who has that day obligation has to hear the sounding of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Vahani kohanim, but these kohanim, ho'il ve'itnihu b'tkiyot dekol shana, since they are obligated when they do their offerings, they hear soundings every single day, multiple times throughout the year. Dichtiv, since it's written, utkatem bechatzotzrot al olotechem, where it's written in the pasuk that you will sound the horns, okay, for your offerings. Emelo l'chayvo. I might say, since they hear it, right, they don't have the obligation to hear it on that specific special day of Rosh Hashanah. You peeked ahead, Marvin. Very good, Marvin. Baruch shekivanta. Very good. Okay, Ema lo l'chayvo. I might therefore say you don't have to require the Kohanim to hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that's not the case. So now Marvin's point, mi dame, are they really similar? Hatam chatzotzrot. There, that pasuk said sounding horns. Bahacha shofar. And here we're talking about sounding the shofar. So I could use that as a distinction between. Ella it's tarich. Rather, I'm going to give you an alternative explanation why Kohanim need to hear. Okay, why we have to include them in our Braita. Sakatat Chamina, I could have said, Ho'il Utnan. Since also I have a Mishnah that teaches Shava Hayovel Rosh Hashanah L'Tkiya U'Lebrachot, that the sounding of the shofar on Yom Kippur of Yovel is similar to sound and blessings on Rosh Hashanah, and man de'ite b'mitzvat hayovel, ite b'mitzvat de Rosh Hashanah, and those who have the obligation of Yovel, who happen to be Kohanim also they have the obligation then of Rosh Hashanah.
No,
Right?
the Kohanim and Leviim
Oh,
are
oh,
not
wait,
obligated.
we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to it in a second, right? Vahani Kohani. We may have thought then, these Kohani, Ho'il v'litnahu b'mitzvah yovel, since they don't have, okay, now, since they don't have that Yovel obligation, okay? I was trying to make a parallel between Yovel and Rosh Hashanah. That made me think maybe Kohanim too. No, but wait a second. Kohanim again have an excuse, right? They don't have that Yovel obligation. Since they don't have the Yovel obligation. Why? It's not. Because we have a Mishnah elsewhere that teaches Kohanim Levi'im, Mochrin la'olam, v'goalim la'olam. They can sell all the time and redeem all the time. Ema, therefore I would say, b'mitzvah de Rosh Hashanah, lo l'chayvo. that maybe, therefore, if you're making that parallel, Kohanim don't have that requirement of Yovel. Okay, so therefore they don't have that requirement of Rosh Hashanah. Kamash Malan. Here's another alternative explanation why I needed to include Kohanim in that statement. Now, we go on. Mi shechetzio eved v'chetzio ben chorin. Half slave or half servant, half freeman. Eino motzi lo et mino v'lo et she'eino mino. He doesn't fulfill the obligation for sounding for somebody like him or not like him. Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, ulatzmo motzi, but for himself, okay, he can blow and fulfill his own obligation. Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Huna, and Rav Nachman says to him, my shnala achirim delo. Why is it for others that he doesn't fulfill? Delo ate tzad avdut umafik tzad cherut. That we can't have the aspect of his being a slave satisfy the obligation for those who are free. La'atzmo nami lo ate tzad avdut didei umafik tzad cherut didei. But for himself also, says Rav Nachman, his slave side or aspect can't fulfill the obligation for his free side. All right? Ela amar Rav Nachman. But Rav Nachman continues, Af la'atzmo eino motzi. But for himself, all right, so that would seem to imply that a woman can't blow for somebody. Tanya nami hachi. And we have a braita that teaches as follows. Mi shechetzio eved v'chetzio ben chorin, one who is half servant and half free, af la'atzmo eino motzi. Even for himself, he cannot satisfy the obligation. Now, I love this name. Tani Ahava Bereit Rabbi Zera. Okay?
Love it.
Right? What a name. Okay? Kol habrachot kulam Afal pishi yatsa motzi. For all blessings. Okay, new topic. We're jumping away from shofar blowing, right? To satisfy reciting blessings. If you've said it for yourself, you can then go ahead and say it for others. Okay. However, and we're now going to get to exceptions. Chutz mi birkat halechem ubirkat hayayin, with the exception of the blessing over the bread and the blessing over wine. Okay?
And it means all birkas nehana.
Right, well, we'll see. She'im lo yatsa motzi. That if he doesn't fill his own obligation, then he can fulfill the obligation of others. Ve'im yatsa, but if he filled his own obligation, eino motzi. He cannot fulfill the obligation of others. Right? Okay, so I'm just looking at my note, but these blessings reflected the derivation of benefit at the time, was what Koren added as a further explanation. By
I have one more question, please. Reb,
Yeah.
Can a man blow shofar for a woman? You didn't answer that.
Yeah. Yes. A man blows shofar for a woman. Yes. We do it all the time.
I know, but
Every
it
Rosh
didn't
Hashanah.
address that at all.
By Rava, he
It
says, Rava asks, as we begin to finish this parak, Shel matzah. What about matzah? All right, right? That's all right on the part of the Seder, right? Ubrikat hayayin shel kiddush hayom. Mahu, what about those? Okay. Kevan dechovahu, since we say it's an obligation. Mafik odilma biracha lav chovahi. All right, does he fulfill the obligation for others? Or do we say maybe there's no obligation with these? Okay. Tashma, listen to the following braita. The Amar Rav Ashi, as Rav Ashi tells us, Ki havinin be Rav Papi. When we were students in the academy of Rav Papi, but we were living in his house, Hava Mekadesh Lan, he would make kiddush for us. V'chi hava ate arise mi dibara, and when his tenant farmers came from the fields, right? What did he do? Hava mekadesh laho. He would then make kiddush for them too. So he would make kiddush more than once. So that tells us that clearly, even if you fill the obligation for yourself once, you can still make it for
You
others,
have to,
right?
you have to.
But you have to, yes, okay. Tanu Rabbanan, but a Braita tells us, Lo yifros Adam prusa la'orchin, ela im kain ochel imahem. But that one should not break off a piece of bread unless he is eating with him. So he must derive, to your point of drinking, I was going to just make it more general, he must derive benefit at that time. Okay? Okay? So aval pros hu levanav livnei beito, but he can give it out, pieces of bread, to his household members, kadei lechancham b'mitzvah, in order to, all right, to educate them, right? Ubahalel ubamegillah, and those af al pi sheyatsa motzi. Even those, okay, even though he has fulfilled his own obligation, he can fulfill it for others. Okay? All right. Hadran alach ra'uhu beit din. All right, now we get to a new Gemara, a new Mishnah, and a new Gemara. Okay, having talked about shofar, how are we doing? Yeah. Okay, having talked about shofar, we're now going to expand as we go into the new parak, other issues regarding Rosh Hashanah, which means ultimately in this parak, we should clearly see some discussion of Malchiot, Zichronot, and shofar, right? The Musa. But we don't get there till later in the parak. Okay, now, what are we going to start off with? What happens if Rosh Hashanah, okay, comes on Shabbos? All right? Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah Shechal Yot B'Shabbat. Okay, B'Mikdash Hayu Tokin. In the base of Mikdash, they used to sound the shofar. Aval lo b'Medina, but not in the environs, not in the rest of the country. Mishacharav Beit HaMikdash, once the temple was destroyed, Hitkin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shahiyu Tokin B'chol Makom Sheyesh Bo Beit Din, that wherever there is a Beis Din, okay? Oh, hold on. Okay, whenever there is a Beis Din, you sound the shofar. Now I want to ask the question. Michael was quick to jump on the issue, okay? Are we talking about Beis Din? Are we talking only Sanhedrin? Or are we talking about any Beis Din? What? That's right. That's the question. Let's go. Amar Rabbi Elazar, he says, Lo hitkin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai ela b'Yavna bilvad. Only he did it so you could blow it in Yavna, where the Sanhedrin would be meeting. Okay, that would seem to be according to Rabbi Eliezer. Amrulo, but they said to him, Echad Yavna ve'echad kol makom sheyesh bo beit din. It means any place where there is a Beis Din, which would mean not just the Sanhedrin. Okay?
It can mean just, it could be.
Whoa, wait, let's see. We're gonna.
It could mean the Sanhedrin after was in Golos.
I understand that. We're gonna get to that. Guys, you're jumping ahead. Okay? All right? So are we saying initially Sanhedrin or any Beis Din? I know what Rashi said. Okay, or, okay, now we're going to get, or as we continue, let's see. Va'od zot hayta Yerushalayim yetera al Yavna. But we're going to raise the question, how was it that Yerushalayim was more significant than Yavna? All right, okay. Shekol ir shehi ro'ah v'shomat ukrova. Okay, any town, I'm going to say here, that could see Jerusalem, or hear, or was close by, v'yichala lavo took in, that therefore they would sound the shofar. Ubiyavna lo hayu tokin ela b'beit din bilvad. Okay, or in Yavna they only blew in the area of the court. Now I want to raise that point and say, when we're talking about Beit Din in Yerushalayim, are we talking about, and Yavna, are we talking about any other place where the Beit Din could have met? So that could have meant, okay, we'll get to right. So therefore, are we talking about places like Usha or other places that, or Sepphoris or other places like that? Okay, so it's not just a two-way argument based in of 70 or any based in of 3 or 20, etc. But it's a three-way machloket, really. Okay, it's based in, it's any based in, or it's only a location where a based in of 70 could be.
From the context.
Right.
The Mishnah, it's clear.
No, it's not
Rabbi
clear.
Eliezer and the Chachamim are debating whether it was only when the Sanhedrin Hagadol was in Yavne, or was it wherever the Sanhedrin Hagadol was? That's got to be the context.
No, I disagree.
Because otherwise, they would not have picked Yavne as the argument.
I disagree.
And Rabbi Gamliel was in, but you'll see. All right.
We'll see. I disagree.
Okay.
All right. All right. So, Menahani Mili, how do we know this? Amar Rabbi Levi Bar Lachma, Amar Rabbi Chama Bar Chani. Katuv Echad Omer, okay, Shabbaton Zichron Trua. Okay, coming back to our initial statement in the Mishnah. Okay, that it is Shabbaton Zichron Trua, a reminder, a remembrance of the Trua. Uktiv Echad Omer, and one pasuk says, Yom Trua Yelachem, that the day of the sounding will be for you. Lo kasha. Kan b'yom tov shechal liot b'Shabbat. One pasuk will use as the Shabbaton Zichron Trua will apply to when Rosh Hashanah is with Shabbat. Kan b'yom tov shechal liot b'chol. Another when it happens on a weekday. Amar Rava. So Rava says, if we're talking about it from the Torah, the Mikdash, how then was it possible that they would sound the shofar right in the base of Mikdash if it's a doraita? Va'od, and furthermore, lav malachi. Okay, and what about the issue is it sounding a shofar? Do we consider that a malacha or not a malacha? All right, the itztarich kra lema'ute, that you would say that you would need a pasuk to exclude it, right? The Tana of the Beis Shmuel, as was taught in the Academy of Shmuel, kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu, that you should not do any kind of work, yatzta tkiyat shofar v'di'at hapat shehi chachma ve'ena melacha, and that excludes sounding shofar or the okay, I was going to say flipping the bread on the inside of an oven. All right? Shehi chachma, that it is a skill, ve'ena melacha, and not considered a simple matter of work. Ela amar Rava, mid'oraita mishra shari. From the Torah, we would argue that it is permitted to blow shofar on Shabbos. However, for Rabbanan, hu de gazur bay. And it was the rabbis who made a decree, okay, right? Kid Rabba, as was said by Rabba de Amar Rabba, Hakol chayavin b'tkiyat shofar, ve'ein hakol b'ki'in b'tkiyat shofar. All are obligated in shofar, but not all are expert in sounding the shofar. Gzeira shema yitlenu biyado. And we rabbis made a decree, lest a person would take the shofar on Shabbat, vayelech etzel habaki, and go to an expert, lilmod, to learn, via avirenu daled amos berishus harabim, and he would carry it for the beyond the Shabbos parameters. Vahainu tama delulav. And this is likewise the rule regarding a lulav, and likewise the rule regarding carrying a megillah. Okay, now we go back to our Mishnah. Mishacharav Beit HaMikdash Yitkin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai v'chule. Okay, now we want to get to this other issue. Okay, was it just, right? Tanu Rabbanan, says a Braita. Pam echat chal Rosh Hashanah liyot b'Shabbat. One time it occurred that Rosh Hashanah came out on Shabbos, right? V'hayu kol ha'arim mitkansin, and people from the towns would come in. Amar lahem Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. He said to them, Lebnei B'Tera, to Bnei B'Tera, Nitka, let's blow the shofar. Amrulo, Nidun. And they said to him, let's discuss it. Okay? Amar lahem, he said to them, Nitka ve'achar kach nadun. Let's blow, and then afterwards we'll discuss it. Lachar shetaku, after they sounded the shofar, Amrulo, they said to him, Nadun, let's discuss it. Amar lahem, Kfar nishma'a keren b'Yavne. We've already heard this sound in Yavne, and therefore ve'ein meshivim la'achar ma'aseh, and we don't come back and discuss it, okay, after the fact. All right. Now, at this point, okay, is where I want to raise the question that Michael has asked. Are we clearly, since here we see that this discussion, okay, are we therefore clearly pointing only to places where the Sanhedrin was? Okay, that's why I wanted to raise it here, okay? Because his argument we're going to see is as follows. Amar Rabbi Elazar, lo hitkin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, ela b'Yavne bilvad. Okay, only in Yavne, okay? Why? Because that's where the Sanhedrin was meeting, implying that therefore it could not be where any smaller Beis Din is, but only a Beis Din of the Sanhedrin 71. That's why I wanted to wait and raise it. Amrulo, they said to him, Echad Yavne ve'echad kol makom sheyesh bo Beit Din. Okay, so at this point, okay, I was not convinced that it had to be only places of a Sanhedrin location. That's why. Okay, that's why. I know, we're going to go on. Amrulo, they said to him, Hainu Tanakama. But isn't this what Tanakama says? Ika beinayu beidina da akrai. Okay, and here's the point. We're only talking about a temporary base.
Meaning the Sanhedrin was en route to the next town.
Okay, in other words, that may be one explanation. Okay, or in other words, it's not a place that doesn't have a permanent base in. Okay, Amrulo, they said to him, and we're going to finish up in a moment. Amrulo, they said to him, Echad Yavne ve'echad kol makom sheyesh bo Beit Din. And the same applies to any place that has a base in. Okay? Right?
It has to be kavua.
Well, I'm still not convinced. Amar Rav Huna goes on, ve'im based in. Okay? My ve'im based in, what do we mean with based in? Bifnei based in, la'afuki shalo bifnei based in, below. Okay, and that's where we're going to stop. Okay, it's not a place that doesn't have based in. Okay? All right? So that's the point. Okay.
With regard to women,
Yeah,
women are not included.
right. Shesma and Grama.
They
Okay, guys.
say women were makabel, so it's the equivalent of a chol filabana,
Right.
and therefore they
Thank
can
you.